starring Steph Curry, Snoop Dogg, and Shaun White. Together with other defenders of good, they can help make the world a better place by playing PlayStation with you. Get the PlayStation Heroes app for PS4, make a purchase for charity, and be entered to play PS4 games with celebrities. PlayStation. Place by playing play.
All right. Gonna start getting set up here. Quiet for a few minutes as I jump around and look at what we did on Wednesday. See where we left off. After hours, I got a little more on paper as far as the idea for refactoring. So I have a good first step that should showcase a few things, and then after that, see where that gets us. Okay, so we have a working inventory and some test items. Hammers, gloves, hat, charm. I just made a second hammer and a second charm. And we also have the ability to add all that inventory to a player. And we added in some basic checks with our bridge pattern. Let's go back and see what those were. So in our player class, we can add an item to our inventory, remove it, equip a weapon, and equip a wearable. We also have now the ability to actually wear things and have them affect our various actions via these algorithms, which check the item for things like attack boost, repair boost, heal boost. So the game's almost getting too big to recap quickly, but we now have the ability to introduce items in the game that are going to have some effect on our players, and to see those effects in action whenever we request to do something. Let's go ahead and run this just to kind of refresh where we were. So we have Gary performing the action of fighting, and we output that Gary did 7 damage. And then we equip, we have Gary equip a hammer, put on some gloves, put on a hat, and then add a charm, or what we're calling behind the scenes a keepsake, is a type of item that, when in your inventory, will give you a boost. Rabbit's foot, military badge, whatever have you. And then we added a few things to his inventory that, if equipped, like the hammer, if it was equipped, it would give a bonus, but if it's just in your inventory, it shouldn't. So those are kind of our sanity checks, or our smoke test for these algorithms we've written that allow for this character to be created, have a class, don armor, if you will, or an outfit or gear, have a weapon and have things in the inventory, and then immediately apply those benefits to their actions. So Gary puts on a Sunday best after we equipped all these things, and then we ask Gary to fight again, and this time he does 17 damage. So we're definitely getting some performance benefits from the things he's wearing. And if we go and we look at Gary, Iron Sharper IntelliSense is not. Where's my IntelliSense period? Let's add Gary as a watch. Huh. Let's do this instead. Let's come in and add some breakpoints so that we'll get our good IntelliSense. Alright, so now that we're properly debugging, we should be able to look at Gary. Alright, back to where we were. So we look at Gary, we look to the, so he's got no experience, he has no level. We know his player type is Carpenter. We can see he's got 3 things in his inventory, he's wearing 2 different things, and he has a test hammer equipped. So we're already, and he's got an action strategy for his Carpenter class. So already a pretty robust kind of character. And if you look at his outfit, we can see that he's wearing things on his hands and his feet. So this all is good, this all works. We've come a long way at the end of this 3rd week as far as the amount of code we have and the complexity we've introduced. So let's refactor our bridge pattern. It's great that we have these items that can be represented in various different ways just for the player, without affecting other inventory domains that we might want to introduce later on. But one point of inefficiency is for each one of our actions, fight, heal, repair, and negotiate, we're really redoing the same logic, which should be a real red flag as far as I can refactor this, I can make this better, and if I ever have to make a change to one, I'll probably have to make a change to all 4. And while that doesn't seem too crazy right now, if you ever have a project where you repeated this in multiple places and you've copied this logic into other classes, you're bound to make a mistake. So it's much easier when you've met these reusability principles and you've said, okay, anything that can be abstracted out into a common use method or class has been. So what I decided to do was, let's find the examples. So I created a new type called inventory augment effect, and I placed it into the base domain. So something that any item can use, whether it's in the player domain or someplace else. But it just says that here are the things that an inventory item could augment. So we come into our player inventory. And again, the benefit of the bridge pattern is that we can really specialize what inventory means for the player and only for the player. So whatever complexity we introduce here doesn't spill over in other parts of the game. So it's very much this idea of our structural design pattern of the bridge keeps things siloed and hopefully neat and orderly. Because the player class as a concept is going to get very, very big. It's going to have to deal with leveling up and loading player profiles and keeping track of whether you're alive or dead and a whole slew of other things, as well as notifications, things that aren't going to affect other parts of the game. And we don't want to have to deal with that noise, right? There's this concept of having noise in the channel, meaning that if we have to see the player stuff everywhere else we deal with inventory, it's going to be really confusing and difficult to maintain. Alright, so we come into our player inventory, and this is kind of where I've done the cooking show thing and now the cake is done. So I've kind of laid this groundwork already just to get the idea on paper, but not complicated at all. I don't want to give the impression that I turn the camera off and then spend 5 hours doing this, and so that wasn't the case. It was like 5 minutes and super simple. And we aren't using anything we haven't seen before. we're using our a dictionary. The great part about the dictionary is that we can use a key. In this case, the effect, and a double. So the amount that we want to, for example, if this item healed and it had a healing benefit, then we'd have that as the effect, and whatever that value would be as the double. And dictionaries are pretty efficient. What we're trying to do is get rid of all this, right? All this that we've got to create and write for every time we create an item. So if we go into weapon, when we look at our fists, we've got to do this every time we create a new weapon, and it's needless, especially when 99% of the attributes are going to be 0. They return 0 and they return false. This is very wasteful and adds a lot of overhead immediately to our architecture. So on day one, a nanosecond after writing out this structure, there was already a level of technical debt and already a level of maintenance of debt associated with even implementing this. So what we want to do instead is we want to say, this goes away, right? So the challenge is, I'll do this. The challenge is, can we actually use one dictionary to replace these flags and then of course these properties? And hopefully the answer is yes. So it's going to be a big refactor in the sense of the impact it's going to have on our structure, but it's a pretty simple thing to do as far as using a dictionary and using a type. So come back over to this and everything's red, which is fair. So let's unclick our other. Oh. Alright, so I got this other little sheet. So what I actually want to do is I want to say inside of my inventory where the action effect contains key attack, sum up all of those values. So for everything in my inventory that has an attack augmentation, I want to sum up all of that, and that'll be my boost. All right. So immediately I can get rid of this. Oops. That's actually not what, that's the outfit or inventory boost. Alright, so get rid of that and this line goes away. Alright, so next, and so now I'm going to go through my code and start to refactor it before I do these other two. So I want to see what that looks like inside of something like keepsake. So test charm. So I'm looking at this, and the only thing this thing does is 3. So if you look at this and you're saying to yourself, if I wanted to at a glance understand what effects this test charm has on the player, it's actually difficult to do this. You have to read every line, and like even this, you know, it's difficult to at a glance say, okay, false, 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 true, false. Your eyes are going to glaze over. You haven't had your coffee yet. It's going to be difficult to see. 0, 0, 0, 3, 0. It's tough. So what we want to do instead is we want to inherit our dictionary with our inventory augment and our double,